Hi, I'm Kate from Hand Connection and welcome to this week's Energy for Everybody. So for those who haven't been here before, each week I just provide or just share a really simple energetic guide just to help you navigate the days ahead. And it's not about me trying to predict outcomes or what's going to happen in your life. I'm just trying to offer some awareness around the energy and the quality of each day of the week. So I just encourage you to take what resonates and just leave what doesn't. So moving into this week, you might notice this week actually feels pretty familiar to what it did last week. And that's because it's more of a continuation of last week's energy rather than like a sharp reset or a sharp shift. So we're just deepening on what last week brought you. The themes are similar, but how they show up is going to feel a little bit different for you. So where last week was more about noticing what was present and kind of sitting with that and letting it sit within you, this week is more about how it is that you respond to it in real life. So bringing it into a bit more reality and manifestation. So as we move through the days, I'll gently point out where the energy is sort of echoing last week and where it's changing subtly. So overall, this week feels like we're kind of settling into a bit more of a rhythm, and the emotional tone remains steady and still kind of reflective, but there's less uncertainty this week around it. So if last week you felt like you were standing still and just sort of observing everything around you, this week you might feel like you've got more of a sort of forward momentum and you feel more confident with what you already know. But there's still going to be like this careful, safe kind of approach to it. So the beginning of the week is slower and still a little more inward. Midweek is going to bring a little bit more expression and connection, and it's going to feel easier than it did last week. And then by the weekend, there's this sense of kind of like a quiet alignment happening within. Not because everything's resolved and you've got it all figured out, but mainly because you're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with where things are at. So this week, where small conscious responses happen, that's going to create more ease for you than like really big decisions. Today is carrying a similar emotional sensitivity that last Monday carried, but it's going to land a little bit differently in the body. So if at the start of last week you felt kind of heavy or emotionally dense, today will feel steadier than that. So if you find that you're aware of that today, just notice where you might actually have a little bit more capacity to hold what it is that you're feeling without actually feeling overwhelmed. Mentally, there's a really big pull towards practical tasks in order to give you a little bit of grounding. So this might look like organizing stuff or prioritizing things or just simplifying how it is that you go about doing stuff today. Physically, your nervous system's really going to benefit from that which is familiar. And so sticking to routine and sticking to what feels normal and what feels safe today is a good way to go. Your decision making is going to feel best when it's slow and it's considered rather than being reactive. So today you might notice that you're wanting to begin the week kind of gently instead of like pushing things forward and trying to get momentum. And your emotional needs might feel a bit clearer because you've got more space than you did last week. And your family or work dynamics might feel a little less fragile than they have been. So choosing comfort and structure, what feels safe and what feels normal over grasping onto something new or unconventional, that's the way to go today. Today is also mirroring last week's theme of mental clarity starting to emerge, but this time you might find it feels way more usable, like more tangible. It feels more real, if that makes sense. So where last Tuesday may have brought insight without actually getting any results or resolution, today supports practical understanding. So that insight could manifest into something that makes more sense, or it might come out like a decision that will be made based on that insight that you had last week, but now you're actually able to make the decision and kind of bring it into reality. You might also find that today your emotions are still quite heavily influencing your decision making and your thinking, but they should feel a little easier to work with today rather than what you were feeling like last week and feeling like, you were constantly having to manage them if that's where you were at. Your body is going to really respond well to clear communication today and realistic pacing with it as well. So just say what you mean, be clear about what it is that you're trying to get across. Try not to rush it. So if you need to prepare a little bit first, write it down, or just take the time that you need to get the words clear in your head before you go having the conversation. And this will help conversations feel more constructive today and also enable you to finally find the right words for something that you might have been holding back on last week. It might also show up in you having the confidence to actually make a small decision or a big decision that might have felt a little bit premature to make last week. Or even just like setting a boundary with some, I suppose, less emotional charge behind it. And you may feel mentally way more organized without feeling like you're stuck or that you're up against a brick wall or feeling really rigid. So today is about your clarity, moving from awareness and into action. Midweek carries quite a noticeable echo of last week's expressive energy. Remember all that mental clutter that we had on Wednesday last week. But we've got less hesitation today as well, a little bit like yesterday. So if you felt ideas bubbling up last week without quite knowing what to do with them, today is actually going to really support you in sharing them or making the connections that you need to make in order to give them some momentum and to start actually responding to them with a little bit more certainty and a little bit more clarity. Emotionally, you might feel a little bit more open today. So I just encourage you, if you are feeling that, to embrace it and just let whatever needs to be let out, flow out, and let go and let yourself open up to what you might not have been ready to open up to last week. Mentally, things are going to be moving fast again. As I said, like last Wednesday, there's a lot of noise going on in the mind, but today you might find that it's got a better flow to it. So if you experience that fast mental activity today, your nervous system's going to love you if you give your body a little bit of movement instead of stillness. So get up, go for a walk, do some yoga, go to the gym, pump out some Pilates, whatever you need. As a result of today's energy, you might also find that conversations are actually flowing way more naturally and way more easily, or you might find your social or creative energy might feel a lot lighter than last week. And this will give you a sense of confidence around expressing yourself. So really embrace that if that is where you're at today. And try and tap in to a little less overthinking. So after you've said or done whatever it is that you needed to say or do and needed to get out, just take a moment to appreciate the fact that you've done it and the fact that it's out, and try not to worry too much about what comes next or what's going on that's out of your control. Because what felt tentative or not quite ready last week feels way more natural this week. So enjoy. So if you felt like last week you were noticing there were these patterns or these subtle little synchronicities, or like you were getting some little clues without really knowing what it meant, but there was like this awareness that it was pointing to something, today is going to offer some perspective around that. So I just encourage you to keep that awareness alert, sort of keep your wits about you and just see if you can capture what it is that today's energy is trying to show you. On an emotional level today, you might actually feel like you have more space for acceptance, and that's always quite a nice calming feeling. So just let yourself flow with that sensation openly if it is what comes to you today, because you might also experience some reoccurring relationship patterns popping up today. And you might find that, again, that openness and that acceptance comes through with how it is that you're responding to those. Today's kind of enabling you to respond to those reoccurring relationship patterns with a little bit less judgment around them. Mentally, you might still find that you've got this urge to try and analyze and like map everything out and try and make sense of everything. But today it's got a little bit more of a softer approach, which is going to help to bring understanding around what it is that you've been trying to gain clarity on. So just see if you can try and keep the pace of your day a little bit slower if you can. You might find that your body's really calling for some breaks. So just, grab a cuppa, take 5, and just allow yourself a bit of breathing space throughout the day if the day allows it. And just remember, you don't have to justify rest. If you need to have a break, take it. And if you've got the luxury of having a little nap today during the day, then take that too. Also, if you've got an unfinished project on the go, or if you've got a task at work that isn't quite completed, just let yourself leave for the day anyway. You might actually surprise yourself and realize that today you don't care leaving it unfinished. Allowing something to be unfinished without that feeling of discomfort is really refreshing. So if that's not a normal feeling for you, just enjoy it today. You might also find today that you gain insight by tapping into your intuition. So you might get some clearer perspective today just by observing rather than trying to fix. So last Friday, there was this real call for self-care and connection, but for some of you, you might have felt like it was a little bit out of reach. Good news is today's energy is suggesting that it might actually be a little bit more available this time around. So today's really supporting moving through the day with ease where you can, if you can. And emotionally, you might find that you've got like this inner desire just to enjoy and to have fun and to relax rather than trying to process everything that's going on in your head. Mentally, you might find yourself feeling a little bit more flexible, of being able to let go and feeling more flexible around not having to control everything. So I encourage you just to feed your body with things that bring you joy and pleasure and connection. You might notice today that you're also feeling a little bit more open to other people's perspectives as well. And this could potentially show up in feeling a little bit more open and collaborative at work or at home. So you might find that you're naturally choosing enjoyment without having those feelings of guilt attached to it today. So enjoy that if that is where you're at. Creatively, flowing with playfulness is a nice way to approach any creative pursuits. Overall, connections today are going to feel easier when you stop trying to manage them. Saturday brings integration again. It's kind of similar to last week, but today it's more embodied. So if last Saturday you felt like you were thinking about alignment, today you might find that you're actually living in that alignment. Like the alignment has actually manifested into reality rather than just living in your mind. Emotionally and mentally, things settle into coherence today. So there's like this consistency between what's happening on an emotional level and what's going on in your head. So they might show up in the choices that you're making and feeling like there's less debate around them and feeling like your decisions are coming from more of an intuitive level. And there's a bit of gentle structure that's being welcomed today as well. So try not to be too rigid, be open and flexible, and just allow yourself to accept a change of plans today and give yourself some room to move. So this could just be as simple as, adjusting your space or your schedule in order to reflect how you feel now rather than how you felt when you made your plans. You might also find today that the time that you spend with family feels a little bit more grounded and doesn't really feel as draining as it has, if that's where you've been at. So any decisions that you make today, they might feel kind of like quietly right. So just that inner comfort and that kind of inner knowing sort of feeling around your decision making today. Overall, the vibe today is one where alignment shifts from intention into lived experience. Sunday's carrying the same kind of restorative tone as last week, but today it's got a little bit more closure. So if last Sunday you felt like you were sort of pausing mid-process, today's going to feel like more of a softer landing. So you might find it's like this sense of completion coming around today. And you might also find yourself like naturally moving and adjusting yourself mentally towards what's next without actually feeling that pressure behind it. Today is not a high stimulation kind of day either. It's got a much gentler energy around it. So this could potentially show up for you in the way that you're simply reflecting on the week that's been, and you might find that you're doing it with a lot less self-criticism. Also, any planning that you do today might feel calm rather than urgent, and you might also find yourself wanting some peace and quiet today. So if you can, give yourself that space. Try and incorporate like some simple rituals, or just have a nice bath, or, you know, have a longer shower than you normally do. Take a walk in nature, or just take some extra time getting ready. So bring some mindfulness to like washing your face or applying your makeup or something like that. Overall, the week is settling really gently, and it's really just preparing you for what follows. So to sum it up, this week, it's not asking you to change direction. It's just asking you to move with a little bit more confidence along the path that you're already on. So as the days pass, just try to notice what's starting to feel more stable, what's starting to feel more workable, or what's just starting to feel a little bit more familiar in a supportive way. Because that steadiness is what carries forward into the coming week. So if this has helped you make sense of where you're at right now, or if anything within this resonated for you, please do like the video. And I'd love it if you could comment on what particularly stood out for you. I'd really love to know. Also, you're welcome to share it with someone who might also need the same grounding. If you would like to watch these videos each week, also would love it for you to return, and to do so, just hit the subscribe button to make sure that you don't miss out on next week's video. Thank you very much, and hope you have a lovely, clear and grounded week ahead.